Good evening. Welcome to the International Great Black Read Aloud Day 2022. My name is LD Robinson, and I am the founder of the International Great Black Read Aloud Day, or what we affectionately call TIGBRAD. And so we are in our second year of reading aloud from works written by Black people all around the world. And our slogan, our tagline is that we are giving voice to words written by Black people all around the world in the name of education and literacy. And so we are reading from a different genre every day. And today is day 6, and it is Memoir Day. And I am happy about our selection for today. Our selection for today is, before we get to that, let's talk about how you can find out more about the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. You can do a couple of things. You can subscribe to our website, which is greatblackreadaloudday.org. And we invite you certainly to do that. You can follow us on social media at Black Read Aloud, and we'll put that up at the end, and learn more about what we're doing. We want to invite you, yes, you. We want to invite you to read along with us. We don't want to be the only ones reading. We have different days. There may be things that pique your interest, and bring along some of your favorite books or some of those great reads that you have and share it with the world. We have people from all around the world that join with us and listening to our readings. And so we want you to be part of that with us as we partner with Fresh Book Festivals that believes literacy is a legacy, and we believe the same thing. We believe very firmly that there is not much in this world that you can do without knowing how to read. Reading helps us in all kinds of ways. And so literacy is a legacy. If you pass something along to your family, to your children, it is the gift of knowing how to read, because through reading, we learn and we grow. And so today, here on day 6 is Memoir Day. And our selection for today is A Promised Land by Barack Obama. Okay. Former President Barack Obama. And so, as you know, he is a writer, and his style of writing is one that I like. And so we are going to read a section from A Promised Land, and this is from the section titled Renegade. Other than the 5 minutes I spent walking across the hall to tuck in the girls and kiss Michelle goodnight, I'd been planted in my chair since dinner time, the same way I was just about every night of the week. For me, these were often the quietest and most productive hours of the day, a time when I could catch up on work and prepare myself for whatever was coming next, poring over the stacks of material my staff secretary sent up to the residents for my review. The last economic data, decision memos, drafts of speeches, informational memos, intelligence briefings, legislative proposals, drafts of speeches, press conference talking points. I felt the seriousness of my job most acutely when reading letters from constituents. I received a nightly batch of 10, some written in longhand, others printed out emails, arranged neatly in a purple folder. They were often the last thing I looked at before going to bed. It had been my idea, the letters, one that came to me on my second day in office. I figured that taking in a steady dose of constituent mail would be an efficient way for me to reach outside the presidential bubble and hear directly from those I served. The letters were like an IV drip from the real world, an everyday reminder of the covenant I now had with the American people, the trust I carried, and the human impact of each decision I made. I insisted on seeing a representative cross-section. I don't want just a bunch of happy talk stuff from reporters, I told Pete Rouse, who was now a senior advisor in the West Wing's resident Yoda. Other than that, we left it up to our correspondence office to choose which of the 10,000 or so letters and emails that flowed into the White House daily went into a folder. What a task to narrow down 10,000 emails, 10,000 or more emails and letters a day down to 10. Um, that takes quite a bit of skill. For the first week, what I read was mostly feel good stuff. Notes of congratulations, people telling me how inspired they've been on Inauguration Day, kids with suggestions for legislation. You should pass a law to cut down on the amount of homework. But as weeks went by, the letters became more somber. A man who had worked at the same job for 20 years described the shame he felt when he had to tell his wife and kids he'd been laid off. A woman wrote after the bank foreclosed on her home. She was worried that if she didn't get immediate help, she'd end up on the streets. A student had dropped out of college. His financial aid had run out, and he was moving back into his parents' house. Some letters offered detailed policy recommendations. Others were written in anger. Why hasn't your Justice Department thrown any of these Wall Street crooks in jail? Or with quiet resignation, I doubt you'll ever read this, but I thought you should know we are hurting out here. Most often, they were urgent appeals for help, and I would write back on a note card embossed with the presidential seal, explaining the steps we were taking to get the economy moving again, offering whatever encouragement I could. I would then mark the original letter with instructions for my staff. See if Treasury can check with the bank about a refinancing option, I'd write. Or does the VA have a loan program for vets in this situation? Or simply, can we help? This would usually be enough to focus the attention of the relevant agency. The letter writer would be contacted. Days or weeks later, I'd receive a follow-up memo explaining the actions taken on their behalf. Sometimes people would get the relief they had sought, their home temporarily saved, a spot in an apprenticeship program. Still, it was hard to take any satisfaction from individual cases. I knew that each letter represented the desperation of millions across the country, people counting on me to save their jobs or their homes, to restore whatever sense of security they had once felt. No matter how hard my team and I worked, no matter how many initiatives we put into place or how many speeches I gave, there was no getting around the damning, indisputable facts. 3 months into my presidency, more people were suffering than when I began, and no one, including me, could be sure relief was in sight. On February 18th, the day after I signed the Recovery Act, I flew to Mesa, Arizona to announce our plan to deal with the collapsing housing market. Other than job loss, no aspect of the economic crisis had a more direct impact on ordinary people. With more than 3 million homes having gone into some stage of foreclosure in 2008, another 8 million were now at risk. Over the final 3 months of the year, home prices fell almost 20%, meaning that even families who could manage their payments suddenly found themselves underwater, their house worth less than they owed, their primary investment and nest egg now a millstone of debt around their necks. The problem was at its worst in states like Nevada and Arizona, two of the epicenters of the subprime-driven housing bubble. There, you could drive through entire subdivisions that looked like ghost towns, with block after block of cookie-cutter homes, many of them newly built but lifeless, properties developed but never sold, many of them newly built, or sold and promptly foreclosed upon. Either way, they were empty, some with their windows boarded up. The few homes still occupied stood out like little small oases, their postage stamp lawns green and tended, cars parked in the driveways, lonely outposts against a backdrop of ravaged stillness. I remember talking with a homeowner in one of these developments during a campaign visit to Nevada. He was a sturdy 40-ish man in a white t-shirt who had turned off his lawnmower to shake my hand while a towel-headed boy zipped around behind him on a red tricycle. He was luckier than many of his neighbors, he told me. He'd had enough seniority at the factory where he worked to avoid the first wave of layoffs, and his wife's nursing job seemed relatively secure. Still, the house they'd paid $400,000 to purchase at the height of the bubble was now worth half that amount. They had quietly debated whether their best move was to default on their mortgage and walk away. Toward the end of our conversation, the man looked back at his son. I remember my dad talking about, quote, I remember my dad talking about the American dream when I was a kid, he said. How the most important thing was to work hard, buy a house, raise a family, do things right. What happened to that? When did that just become a load of? He trailed off, looking pained before wiping the sweat from his face and restarting his mower. The question was what my administration could do to help a man like that. He hadn't lost his home, but he lost faith in the shared enterprise of our country, its larger ideal. Affordable housing advocates and some progressive in Congress were pushing a large-scale government program to not only reduce monthly mortgage payments for people at risk of losing their homes, but actually forgive a portion of their outstanding balance. At first blush, the idea had obvious appeal. A, quote, bailout for Main Street, not Wall Street, end quote, as proponents suggested. But the sheer scale of lost home equity across the country made such a principal reduction program cost prohibitive. Our team calculated that even something the size of a second TARP, a political impossibility, would have a limited effect when spread out across the $20 trillion US real estate market. We settled on launching two more modest programs, both of which I detailed that day in Mesa. The Home Affordable Modification Program, HAMP, designed to reduce the monthly mortgage payments of eligible homeowners to no more than 31% of their income, and the Home Affordable Refinance Program, HARP, which would help borrowers refinance their mortgage at lower rates even if their homes were underwater. By design, not everyone would be assisted under these programs. They wouldn't help those who, through subprime loans, had bought way more home than their income could support. Nor would they be open to those who had bought real estate as a debt finance investment, thinking they could flip the property for a profit. Instead, the goal was to target several million families teetering on the edge, those who lived in their homes and had made what had seemed at the time like a responsible purchase, but now needed relief to get them through. Implementing even these limited programs posed all kinds of logistical hurdles. For example, while it was in the interest of mortgage lenders to keep families in their homes, in an already depressed market, foreclosed homes sold at fire sale prices, resulting in big losses for the lender. Mortgages were no longer held by a discrete set of banks that we could pressure into participating. Instead, they've been securitized, sold in bits and pieces to various investors around the world. The homeowner never dealt directly with these anonymous lenders, instead sending mortgage payments to a servicing company that operated as little more than a glorified bill collector. Without the legal authority to force these servicing companies to do anything, the best we could do was offer incentives for them to offer homeowners a break. We also had to convince the servicing companies to process millions of applications to determine who was or wasn't eligible for a mortgage modification or refinancing, something they were ill-equipped to do. And just who exactly was deserving of government assistance? This question would insinuate itself into just about every policy debate we had throughout the economic crisis. After all, as bad as things were in 2009, the vast majority of American homeowners were still figuring out a way, by hook or by crook, to stay current on their mortgages. To do so, many had cut back on eating out, canceled their cable TV, or spent down savings intended for their retirement or for their children's college expenses. Was it fair to devote the hard-earned tax dollars of those Americans to reducing the mortgage payments of a neighbor who'd fallen behind? What if the neighbor had bought a bigger house than they could really afford? What if they had opted for a cheaper but riskier type of mortgage? Did it matter if the neighbor had been duped by a mortgage broker into thinking they were doing the right thing? What if the neighbor had taken their kids to Disneyland the year before rather than putting that money into their rainy day fund? Did that make them less worthy of help? Or what if they had fallen behind on their payments not because they put in a new swimming pool or taken a vacation, but because they lost their job or because a family member had gotten sick and their employer didn't offer health insurance or because they happen to live in the wrong state? How did that change the moral calculus? For policymakers trying to halt a crisis, none of these questions mattered, at least not in the short term. If your next door neighbor's house is on fire, you don't want the fire department dispatcher asking whether it was caused by lightning or by someone smoking in bed before agreeing to send a fire truck. You just want the fire put out before it reaches your house. Mass foreclosures were the equivalent of a 5-alarm fire that was destroying everyone's home values and taking the economy down with it. And from our perspective, at least, we were the fire department. Our selection today is Memoir, and we have read from A Promised Land by Barack Obama. And we read a section from his chapter titled Renegade. A very timely chapter, I'd say, in our American economy right now. And so it is very interesting how things look compared to what he wrote about what happened in 2008 and 2009. So tomorrow is Thriller Day. You can find our list on our website and on our social media pages, the list of what we're reading every day. Tomorrow is day 7, Thriller. And so we'll be back tomorrow with another selection for the International Great Black Read-Aloud Day. We hope you have enjoyed our selection today by former President Barack Obama. And we have read to you from A Promised Land. If you haven't subscribed to our site, go ahead and subscribe to the International Great Black Read-Aloud Day and join us in reading. Find out everything we've got going on. Follow us online at Black Read-Aloud. That is our handle on social media. And we will see you tomorrow for another wonderful day of reading. This is the International Great Black Read-Aloud Day 2022. And it is my pleasure to have read to you from our selection for today. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.